Hello, WiCCD members. My name is Shukairy, and I am WiCCD's Education Committee Director. I'm happy to introduce our series, Finding Your Niche. In this series, we will interview female criminal defense lawyers who practice in a specific area within criminal law. The goal of our series is to highlight the work and accomplishments of female criminal defense lawyers, but it is also a way for us to introduce you to specialty areas within criminal law. We hope we can help you find your niche. Enjoy the series.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks, Maya. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to do this interview with me for WiCCD, and it's for the Finding Your Niche series. So before we talk about your niche, maybe if you can tell us just a bit about yourself, where your practice is based.
Yeah, sure. My name's Michelle O'Doherty. I'm in Ottawa, Ontario. I went to law school here, and when I was for articling, I articled at Bain Seller Boxall. It's now called Bain Seller Ertl McRae, because Norm Boxall became a judge a few years ago, and then Ian Carter became a judge this past year. So I've been at the same firm since my articles in 2011, and our firm, my practice is predominantly criminal law, defense work. I do have a number of clients that kind of go through the mental health stream. I've had a number of clients over the years in front of the ORB, the Ontario Review Board too. So I think I do, mostly criminal, but then also a number of mental health matters with not criminally responsible. So that would be, and I've done, as low level stuff as like thefts and breaches and assaults to serious stuff. I've, on dangerous offender applications and things like that. So, yeah.
All right, so that's interesting. On the more specialized ORB stuff in mental health cases, how did you get these cases?
I think just kind of getting to know different like duty counsel and other practitioners in that area sort of thing. So in Ottawa, I guess it depends on the jurisdiction that you're in, but in Ottawa they have a mental health court. So it's 2 to 3 days a week, depending. Pre-pandemic it was Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm not sure if they still do Fridays anymore, but in any event, there's a specialized court, and part of that is that there's connections with CMHA workers and things like that. So you kind of, if you start, getting to know those people, well, when they have clients that need a lawyer, then they may refer someone to you. Also, although like duty counsel doesn't direct people to certain lawyers, if duty counsel staff know that certain lawyers will take mental health clients, because they are a little bit more tedious, right? Like they sometimes, you could be dealing with people who have some significant complex challenges, maybe are not aware or not willing to accept those challenges. And so they can be quite tedious clients in some cases. Also, thinking about putting someone into the ORB or having them found not criminally responsible is a very serious step for someone to take. So it requires a lot of attention and a lot of just being mindful of that, right? And meeting people where they are, what they're looking to do with their files and things like that. It's not everyone likes to deal with mental health clients, so which I've enjoyed my time with those mental health clients, helping them navigate the system. And so that's, I think, how the best way to sort of develop, if that's an area people are interested in, how to develop that.
All right. And so you did mention here a few interesting things that, in fact, clients who do have mental health issues are sometimes a bit different than regular clients that we have in the criminal cases. They require maybe more attention, or maybe there has to be, you want to make sure that they really understand when you're explaining to them what you're doing in a case. So maybe if you can just explain that for people who don't really have that much experience doing mental health cases and who are maybe afraid of that aspect of the practice.
Yeah, I think it just like boils down to being empathetic, right? Like you need to be empathetic to the person that you're dealing with, mindful of the fact that like you know, they are like, they have their own lived experiences. You don't know that, what their lived experiences are, and that may be, you know, part of who they are, right? And you have to be, you know, empathetic to that and meet them where they're at. I kind of look at my job as a defense lawyer as, yes, helping this person, whether it's going to trial, whether it's you know, resolving their matter, but I'm also, you know, there to explain or try to help them understand what the options are in their own words, right? Something that they can bring it down to their level or bring it up to their level, whatever it needs, you know? And I think recognizing that everyone has choices and decisions to be, they can make their own choices for themselves, and you're not there to determine what is the best choice for them, right? They're there to decide what their choice is. And so, you know, there's some clients who I would think, well, maybe if you did take the medication, it would maybe help, you know, but that's not my choice to make. It's not my experience to live in their life. So I have to meet that client where they're at with what they want to do, right? And so I think, you know, and that understanding that my role is different than someone else's role within their lives, right? So like if they have a worker somewhere, right, like a CMHA worker, or maybe they're part of, you know, they have a nurse through an ACT team, that person's role in their life is much different than my role, right? My role is as their defense lawyer, their advocate, and I'm not there to push any sort of agenda or any sort of treatment options on them. I'm there to listen to them, right? And to accept who they are as they are, sort of thing. So that's how I sort of envision the role. And I think that that's helps, you know, engaging with those clients and having a good relationship with them.
And because you did mention that often these clients do have other individuals who are also involved with them, social workers, maybe, or mental health workers. So how much do you have to be in touch with the other individuals who are also involved with the clients?
I mean, I usually think it's helpful to be in touch with, depending on who the other workers are, but like my general experience is, you know, with CMHA workers, they're usually very helpful. They are, from my experience with the people in Ottawa, they are, you know, very strong advocates for their clients as well. And a lot of times meet their clients where their clients are at, right? If there's someone that doesn't want treatment or wants treatment or doesn't want medication or whatever. So I feel like it's very important to connect with the CMHA workers, because I find that they can be very useful when I'm dealing with someone's charges. Obviously, we need to get permission from the client. It's always the client's discretion. It's, even though I think it's a good idea, if the client doesn't want me talking to the CMHA worker, I'm not going to, right? And you know, sometimes there's like psychiatrists involved and things like that. And so, you know, it depends on, a lot of times, frankly, who the psychiatrist may be, right? Who the other, like the nurses are. And you can speak to someone if you get permission from the client, and you can kind of get a flavor for, you know, is this person sort of, are we on the same page? Are you know, pushing for the same thing, or are we sort of opposite, right? You know, and you know, maybe the psychiatrist is, the client is on, you know, a CTO, community treatment order, and so they're required to see a psychiatrist, right? It's not their decision. And so maybe that psychiatrist is not someone who you know, has the same perspective as I do, taking my client's instructions, than you know, because they're in a different situation in the client's life. So yeah, so I think it really kind of, it depends. Unfortunately, it's a case by case basis, right? Like you have to decide, you know, who do you think is most valuable to you and can be of assistance. Sometimes like CMHA workers are really great in connecting you with the clients, right? If you're dealing with clients who are homeless, maybe are transient, don't have phones. You know, I've had clients where I'll contact the CMHA worker, right? And I'll say, hey, have you seen this person recently? Can you let them know I'm looking for them? I really need to talk to them. It's good news. You know, I don't want a person worried, panicking that there's something bad happening. I just need to speak to them, kind of thing. So sometimes having those good connections can be very useful.
Yes, actually, that is a good point, that sometimes they are also I mean, it's a good thing to be in touch with them, if not just to reach the client. So that
Yeah.
is actually a very good point, because there is sometimes your only point of contact with the client. But also what you mentioned at the beginning, they can also be a source of referrals, right? They can also refer to you other cases in the same niche if you're interested in this line of work. So that's a good way also to build that connection, so you can get more work because you're working closely with them and they get to see you working. They hear from the clients, they get feedback, and so they'll know if you're doing a good job for the clients. So that's also important. So Michelle, one thing that I wanted to ask you though is that, because mental health law and the practice of or these types of cases, the law is a bit separate. It's a bit complex in this area. So how, because you also do other types of criminal cases, it's not like you're exclusively doing mental health court. So how do you balance a practice doing all these types of cases together?
I mean, I think it's like anyone that has like, different files and things like that. I mean, it's like constantly a juggling process and sort of figuring out which balls are going to bounce if they bounce off the floor and which ones are glass. So I need to keep juggling them at this point in time. And it sort of changes from week to week. I mean,
Mhm.
I think like, with mental health files, like I treat them sort of like the same as my other files, right? Like, I mean, these are clients that I'm not just sort of rushing through and trying to like just get a deal and resolve as quickly as possible for whatever the Crown wants, right? I'm going through the disclosure, I'm meeting with the client, I'm trying to figure out, are there defenses available? What's the best way to deal with this? Should we be getting like an assessment done? Should it be done privately or in, by a court order? So I think it's kind of the same as you're managing other files. What do you have, what kind of time do you have this week to work on it, and like trying to just get through it? So
Yes.
yeah.
And when you want to, let's say, you, like you want to prepare a client for these types of files. So how does that happen?
Well, like if you, let's say for example, you're getting like an assessment done, right? Like, I've had a few clients where I've wanted, I've had concerns about their whether or not they're NCR, not criminally responsible, right? So I would say typically, even if it's a legal aid file, I oftentimes will try to get a private assessment done. And one of the reasons why I try to get a private assessment done is that, it's private. You get to choose the lawyer, the psychiatrist that you can do. You don't have to disclose the report to anyone. So I can take a look at the report, determine if it's a good report, determine if it's helpful, and then decide if I'm, meet with the client and then decide if we're going to disclose it to the Crown, if we're going to pursue that or not pursue that, right? So oftentimes, in terms of prepping with the client for that kind of stuff, I'll explain, what I think about the process, what I, explain what the NCR process is, explain sort of the consequences of that, explain, what could happen when you're seeing the psychiatrist, what, to be open and honest with the psychiatrist about their questions. If it looks like, it's an avenue that we really want to pursue, I'll kind of, say to them, like, it's really important to be honest totally with the psychiatrist and whatnot. So yeah, like in those kind of cases, that's how I would sort of prep the client. um I think it's important, I think it's, before you start going down routes of like, am I going to go into mental health court, are we going to get connected with these resources, should I help you get connected with those resources? I think you need to like sit down and talk to the client about like, what do they want, right? Like, do they want resources, right? Because if they want resources, great. But if they don't want that, then you have to respect that too, right? Even if that's what you think, and maybe I'll say to a client, like, getting connected with resources will help your case, right? But if you don't want to do it, I'm not going to force you. And other times, maybe, maybe resources would help, but your client's not admitting the offense at all, right? So like it's going to trial. So, what's the purpose of getting them, meeting with people that like where things could get disclosed and hurt the client, right? So I think the first step would be to sort of like meet with the client when you have the disclosure, when you've had a chance to review it and kind of figure out, okay, what are we going to be doing about this file, right? What are we like, what do you want to see? And these are the options that you have. And then from there, kind of navigate it and help them navigate that.
And even when a client has mental health issues, or you think that they have mental health issues, you still have to have a normal client relationship, a lawyer-client relationship with them. So yeah. And I wanted to ask you, Michelle, so how soon in your career or practice did you get into mental health cases?
I would say that it was probably within a few years. I mean, I think it's kind of easier when you're in. I would say that I started like kind of getting more mental health clients within a few years. I mean, you always have a few clients as you kind of start out. It sort of helps in my office. Like there's 9 of us or 8 of us now, but so. Like when there's one of the senior lawyers has a file that they don't really necessarily want to deal with, like they don't have the time or effort or patience to deal with it, then maybe they'd refer it to me, kind of thing, right? So I was able to develop that. And then unfortunately for some clients who are before the Ontario Review Board, they could be there for years, right? So they just kind of typically just usually keep coming back. So that's sort of how that kind of gets bigger over the years.
And so for someone who's interested in developing a practice in mental health law, what advice would you give them?
So, I mean, I think just like learning about those different avenues, right? Learning about fitness, what is fitness? Also, ORB, what is not criminally responsible? What does that entail? Just kind of having a general knowledge of that. If you're, you can always reach out to, there's every day almost, there's probably ORB hearings happening across Ontario now, with a lot of things happening via Zoom. Like it's easier to get access to that, right? So watching those kind of processes would definitely be helpful in terms of if you have a duty counsel office in your courthouse, maybe trying to see if there's any sort of connection you can build there. If there's a mental health court, getting to know the people that are working in the mental health stream, that kind of stuff, right? So I think it's just maybe, networking as much as you can, and then just sort of letting it build as it goes on.
Yeah, and that is a good point. Like if you're in a jurisdiction where there is a specialized court and you're interested in that type of work, then that's a good way to get into this line of work, is just by either attending these court sessions or connecting with people who are there on a regular basis. So that is a good point. Okay, well, thank you so much, Michelle, for your time. It was really very nice to hear from you, and from someone who's in the East region, and to hear, about your practice. So thank you very much for doing this.
You're so welcome, Maya. Thanks.